We here at Kink Candid are pleased to tell you a little bit more about Anchor. Anchor is our new podcast hosting software. We are in love with it. Anchor is the easiest way I have found to make a podcast. It'll give everything you need in one place, all for free, which is awesome. And you can use it from your phone or your computer. Their creation tools helped us record our first little blurb episode and edit so that it sounds great. Got music and everything else you can add to it. It's fantastic. They will handle the distribution of your podcast for you, so you can be heard everywhere: Spotify, Apple, Google, and much, much more that I don't even know about yet. You can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. You just have to do some ads just like this. So if you're interested in getting your podcast going with Anchor, go download the Anchor app on your iPhone or Android phone, or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome to our most recent episode of Kink Candid. I am Shay, as usual, and I am here with Jay, our dominant friend who occasionally hosts with us. So we are going to talk a little bit today about the concepts of trust and commitment as they relate to what we do. I've seen a trend, so to speak, in online and social media and conversations about this topic where people have decided that they want to try to have these DS, Dom and Sub, or Daddy and Little, or what have you, type of scenarios, but will pointedly tell you that they aren't in a relationship. It's not romantic. They don't have any kind of relationship or commitment, and some of the issues that sort of pop up because of that. And so I want to share mine from the submissive, this side of the slash perspective, and I've invited him to come and share his from the dominant side of things, because as we all know, it's a little bit different depending on which side of the slash you happen to be on.
Thank you very much for inviting me again.
So, as I said, I've seen recently a lot of conversations revolving around doms and subs, or daddies and littles, and things of that nature that are not romantic. They're not in a relationship. They are friends with benefits, or are frequently referred to simply as fuck buddies. I've literally seen it called that. And some of the issues that come up with that, and I kind of want to touch on why I personally feel that this is a dangerous path to tread. For me, as a submissive partner in this, I can't imagine being able to do what we do without the underlying relationship. We are first and foremost a couple, and that matters. I trust him. He trusts me. We are committed to each other, and that factors into what we do. And it's
as
not,
it should.
We don't. It doesn't exist in a vacuum, so to speak. And the only reason we're able to do some of the things that we do is because we have that underlying committed relationship to each other. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the idea that when I say a committed relationship, I mean that there is a relationship outside of the bedroom. It doesn't necessarily mean that every one of them has to be a monogamous relationship or married or what have you. There are so many forms that relationships can take. But I think there inherently has to be a relationship. And I know that I need to have an incredible amount of trust in him. Now, I will ask you, I assume that from that side of the slash, because I'm not on that side, obviously, but I would assume that level of trust is one of those things that sort of goes both ways. You guys have to have a huge amount of trust in us, too, I would imagine.
It's different for every relationship, obviously, but if you come in, if you come into my door and we begin talking about a DNS relationship, one of the first things I have to trust is that you've heard it referred. You've heard it, I'm sure, in reference to Vegas. what happens here stays here.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think you guys are probably at bigger risk than we are on that front because what we do doesn't typically lead to potentially getting arrested, whereas what you guys do often could, in theory. So I think that's a huge deal. I think because
I wouldn't say we're at more risk. I'd say the risks are different.
True. That's a good point. I'm not likely to get arrested for doing what I do. I am, however, likely to run into potentially family issues and social issues because people don't understand it and things of that nature. So that's the risk that we take getting into this, because
you're also putting your personal safety in the hands of someone else. And I can't imagine a larger risk than that.
Oh, it's huge. And, and it's why I can't imagine doing it on a more casual basis. And I'm not speaking of the idea of the one-off, okay? I know those people out there in the world who are into what we do and go to the parties and the dungeons and things like that. There are one-off situations where this is a dominant who's well respected and he is experienced with this thing that my dominant isn't, and I'm going to, with everyone's permission and consent, explore this particular activity with this other person because they're more experienced with it. And that is not casual, but certainly not committed per se. But, and that has happened. I have, in fact, done that in the past. I don't do a lot of that nowadays because we're homebodies. We don't go out and play in dungeons a whole lot anymore. We're a little old for that. But I'm not speaking of those one-offs. Those are always going to be a thing. And I think they have great value, honestly, because it allows you to observe and experience things in the hands of someone who maybe is more experienced than your own partner, so that you guys can decide if this is something you want to explore a little further. But if you play with someone on any kind of a regular basis, I think there has to be some level of commitment, some level of relationship to some degree. I don't think a friends with benefits kind of thing really works very well in this scenario. And I'm sure others have different opinions, and that's the reason I have a co-host on these shows, is so we can get lots of perspectives. But for me personally, I can't see how that would work, really, in the long term.
Not when you consider that the act of playing is a relationship.
I think people think
you're beginning a relationship. You're establishing a relationship by agreeing to participate in these types of activities.
However, it can happen if
now, I myself personally, I think part of the issue is that people are thinking of this in a much more sexual context. And while sex is part of what we do, it isn't all of what we do. And frankly, from my end, it's not even most of what we do. The vast majority of what happens at my house in this context really has very little to do with sex, honestly. And I think we live in a world where casual sex is a thing that exists. And people then assume they make the leap. Casual sex is a thing that exists. BDSM is about sex. Therefore, casual BDSM can exist. And it's this, sort of linear progression. And I'm not sure that I agree that the second and third parts of that are accurate.
I wouldn't think so either, personally.
I mean, I think, yes, casual sex exists. I mean, I personally am not one to do a lot of in that way, just because sex is completely tied to intimacy for me. And so it doesn't really work to just have sex with someone that I'm not connected to in that way. But assuming that you can have casual sex, and I know some people do, There's a very big difference between casual sex and casual BDSM. They are not equivalent statements in my mind. And I often see a question on this one, and this is where I kind of wanted a Dom perspective, because I've seen some Doms talk about this and say, well, we're not in a relationship, but we are Dom and sub, or daddy and little, or, you know, what have you, that they then say things like, well, how do we prevent her from developing feelings for me? How do I stop her from catching feelings? And I sort of stare at my screen every time I see it, because I'm going, I don't understand how you think that's possible, to be honest. I know that for me, and for most submissives that I have known over the course of my life, our feelings toward our dominance are a huge part of what we do. We're not, a lot of us, I think, really aren't even capable of not having feelings for the Dom. I don't know how that would even begin to work. And this is where I wanted your perspective. I don't know, but I know that for my partner, he doesn't, kink and BDSM is tied to feelings for him as well. I don't know how universal that is for Doms, but I know that for him that's true. And I believe, based on how long I have known you, that would be true for you as well, that you're going to have some affection and feelings for a submissive who is involved in any way in your life, regardless of whether they are monogamous or, you know, what level of commitment may vary. But there is going to be some, as far as I would guess.
Yeah, I can't speak to the universality of it, but I can say that I don't enter into a BDSM relationship with anyone without knowing them well and without there being feelings for them. Because if I don't have feelings for them, then their safety isn't of concern to me. And I don't enter into that sort of relationship or that sort of play without their safety being first and foremost.
Now, so that brings up a point that I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit is I know that here, for us, at my house, we are very big on the fact that, as we've talked about, Munchkin and I have talked about this a fair amount, that through various episodes, that both she and I do, in fact, have safe words. Let's be very clear, those safe words do exist, obviously, for the two of us. However, within this relationship, I have at no point in time ever needed to use mine. And the reason that is true is because of the underlying relationship. Because we are committed, because we are connected in a way that isn't just about the BDSM, he knows me incredibly well. Now, I know you and your girl, and I know that's very true for you as well.
Yes.
That these are Doms who know their submissives very, very well. And consequently, well before I ever reach the point of needing to safe word out of something, she'll pick up the changes in body language, the changes in breathing, all those little signs that are nonverbal, and go, okay, yeah, you've had enough. And that's just how that happens. And I don't. Now, obviously, that takes time to develop, but I don't think that it is a good idea, personally, to pursue a relationship where that doesn't develop, where you don't develop that level of connection, that level of commitment, that level of connectedness to each other, because I have to know him and he has to know me so well, and I don't know any of. Well, not any. Let me rephrase that. I won't say any. I don't know most of my friends that well. There are some exceptions, obviously, but generally, no matter how connected I am to my friends, I don't know them quite on that level. And I feel like this bleeds into a significant issue in that you can't ever have that level of. That's my question, I guess. Is it possible, do you think, and I don't, but I want another opinion on this, is it possible to ever have that level of trust and that level of confidence and all of that without the romantic relationship part?
I know doms and subs who have had a relationship without it being romantic, and it seems to work for them, or seems to have worked for them in the past. But I can't imagine it ever working for me. I can't imagine being involved with someone on that intimate a level and there not being a very close and very dependent relationship. And that often does develop into romance. I can't see it working for me any other way.
And I feel like that, I think, and I don't want to knock people who are capable of having and managing their relationships differently than mine, because that's never been my intent with this show. Just never want to knock people who do differently than I do, obviously, because there are so many permutations and ways that this can look. But I think there is a trend, so to speak, of pushing the idea that this is not only possible but good and desirable for most people, and I think that is potentially a bad thing. If it works for other people, then by all means do it, but based on some of what I'm seeing online, there's a lot of people out there who are trying to do this that it just isn't working for, and they think it's something wrong with them, that they're doing something wrong. I see a lot of this. We're not in a relationship, but we are dom and sub, but I'm feeling XYZ that I shouldn't be feeling because he's not my boyfriend, and what am I doing wrong? How do I not feel that way? And that, I think, is the real danger here. Because you end up seeing people thinking there's something wrong with them, and they're terrified. What if I develop feelings? He doesn't want me to develop feelings, or she doesn't want to develop feelings. How do we make that not happen? How do we prevent that? Because they're terrified of this thing that's going to happen, and it's going to ruin what they think is this good situation wherein they are not romantically involved, but are, involved in a kink fashion. And I hate to see people think that there's something wrong with them because they're doing it in a way that they don't work that way. And that, I think, is the big thing that I've always wanted to do with the show, and this topic is one of those things where I want to tell people, you know what, if this doesn't work for you, please understand that there are others out here like you, and
right.
that it is okay.
We aren't meaning to state that this is the only way it works, because there's no. You've said it before, and I'm gonna paraphrase you here. There's no one true way in BDSM or DNS, whatever you choose to call it. And that's not what we're trying to establish here. I'm giving you my experience. Shay's giving you her experience. That doesn't mean that it's the only type of experience out there. It just means that it's what we know.
And when I started, I didn't have nearly as many concerns about this because, as we talked about, we've been at this. The various hosts that have been on the show have been at this for collectively a ridiculously long amount of time. Okay, Dory and I together, one of my best friends, she and I have between us, like almost 40 years of experience between the two of us. And you have been doing this even longer than I have. So, we're talking about just decades and decades of collective experience between us on the show. And when I started, I was very fortunate in the sense that, I had really good guides and mentors and people that were willing to kind of help me figure this all out, which is fantastic. But the other thing that happened is that when I started, the way that I do things was the most common way of doing it. And so I never had to deal with feeling like I was an outlier or wrong in some way, because most people did it the way that I did. And So now, though, I see younger submissives and younger dominants who are coming in now that isn't true anymore. And if they're geared, aligned, sort of the way that we are, they are feeling like, well, what's wrong with me? And that is actually what inspired the show to even exist, is because I wanted to give people that voice to say, no, there are others like that. And, you know, we're not the only right way, but we are a way that can work. And so that's super important to me. It really, really is. And that's what I'm kind of trying to do here is, look, if you are comfortable and happy in a non-romantic, non-committed sort of relationship with your dominant or your submissive, then that is fantastic. And go do dirty things to lovely people, as one of the mods I love on Reddit says. But if you aren't, don't feel like there's something wrong with not being that way, because there just isn't. And if you are the type who needs that commitment, that needs that relationship, that needs that intimacy, that connection, that is absolutely a valid and acceptable way to kind of do things. And which brings me to the other thing that I wanted to discuss tonight. And this has been brewing in my brain for weeks now. It comes up every so often where someone will say something about it, and whether or not this is a sexuality, so to speak. Many people in the world have gotten the idea that being, say, gay or lesbian is a thing that you just are. And you can't and shouldn't try to change that because you were born that way. You didn't choose it. You can't get rid of it. It's not a decision that you're making in any way. It just sort of is a thing that exists. But many people, not all, but many, have accepted that this is a valid sort of thing that exists, that you can be, that you just are that way. But then when we turn around and say that the same is true for some of us with kink, we are told that that's not the case. I have quite literally been point blank told online that submission is never, ever, ever just a part of who you are. It is always a choice that you have to continually make and remake and reevaluate. Allow me to state point blank for the record, this is absolutely not true. Just isn't. Sorry. Now, I am not going to say that it is an inherent part of who you are for everybody, because it isn't. For some people, it's something they can take or leave. It's just something fun they do, and that's it. But for some of us, it is. It is a part of who we are. And that is, it gets lost. And part of the problem I have with that is that every so often someone will bring up in the conversations online whether or not it is equivalent to being LGBT, because we know that LGBT is a sexuality. It's, most of us know it's not something you chose. It just is. And why doesn't that apply to what we are? And now, well, allow me to say for the record on that as well that I personally believe that it is equivalent in that way. There are certain very, very clear similarities. It's not something I chose. It isn't something that I could change. It is something that other people don't necessarily understand or approve of. It's something that I have to be aware of who I exhibit these behaviors in front of, because in front of the wrong person, bad things might happen. And I think there are some similarities to our LGBT brethren. But what often gets said in those conversations, and I saw it just recently, and it's kind of what got me thinking about this, is that it's different because being lesbian or gay or bisexual or transgender isn't just about sex. It's about who you are as a person. It's about who you love and who you're, how you feel affection for other people and all of those things. And that is very, very true. Being gay isn't just about sex. And it just isn't. It's about who you are as a person and who you love and how you love. But I get told regularly that doesn't apply to what we do because it's not the same, because it's not about love or affection or who you are as a person. And I am bothered by this because I think it is. And I'm going to be very open with our listeners a little bit, that be aware that we are, as I've said many, many times, a 24/7 couple. There is no off switch. It doesn't go away. We don't have an out of dynamic or out of role. This is not a thing that happens. I wake up, his slave. I go to sleep, his slave. This is how it works. Doesn't matter what I'm doing. And most of the hosts on the show that you guys will note are all 24/7 type couple. It's not in the bedroom only for any of us on the show. But that being said, it is 24/7, and I'll be honest, a very small, comparatively speaking, amount of what that means and what this is for the two of us has anything to do with sex. Sex is a very little part of it. And I literally am meaning like perhaps a quarter of what we do that constitutes our, MS relationship. About a quarter of that is really about sex, honestly.
If that. In my case, anyway.
Excuse me. The vast majority of it is about things that are so not about sex. It just isn't. It's not about sex. It's about love. It's about affection. It's about connection. It's about who we are as people. And I think that's something that we as a community, and I use the term kind of loosely because community is a very sort of narrow term for what we're talking about, but as a subset of the population, so to speak, I think it's incredibly important that we begin to understand and explain to people. It's one of the reasons that we have such a breakdown online about discussions about whether or not it's appropriate to wear one's collar in public. Now, I know at my house, I wear stainless steel. And that thing stays on the vast majority of the time. It comes off once a week to clean. It comes off a couple times a week for an hour when I go to the gym, because I do a lot of cardio at the gym, and stainless steel bouncing against your collarbone while doing cardio is supremely unpleasant, actually. And so he allows me to just take it off and leave it at home when I'm going to the gym. And it did recently come off this past week because I was in the hospital and I was having surgery, and you obviously can't wear stainless steel in the operating room. So it was at home with him. But I do absolutely wear it in public. And no, it is not a quote-unquote day collar.
No,
I've
seen it. I can testify to that.
Yeah, it's not a day collar. I'm not knocking day collars, and I know that some people in their job settings and things may need something a little more subtle, and that is absolutely a valid reason. And if I needed to have something less blatant for work purposes, he would absolutely allow me to do that. But in my case, it doesn't matter from a job standpoint. But I have seen it said more than once that we shouldn't wear our collars in public because wearing them in public is involving other people in our sexual kink without their consent.
No, it isn't, first of all. And, well, no, it isn't.
And that was kind of my position, was that, but, it's about sex. And I'm like, except that it isn't. And I think, and this all ties in together, because I think the fact that we think of BDSM as being about sex ties into why we don't think it's equivalent to being LGBT, why we don't think it's appropriate to wear collars in public, why we think it's a good idea or more valid to have these sort of non-committed, non-romantic BDSM arrangements. And I think that they're all rooted in that same topic, which is to think that this is primarily about sex. Now I know Jay personally. I've known him for a very long time, and I know his wife. She's a wonderful woman, by the way. I absolutely adore her. But I would, and I have been in their home enough to know their relationship fairly well, and he knows mine fairly well. And yes, I wear my collar in public. I wear my collar all the time. No, I don't feel it's inappropriate, and I don't feel it's inappropriate because it's not sexual. My collar is not
It's
sexual.
a piece of metal.
Yeah, and to me, it is absolutely equivalent to wearing my wedding ring. And no one would suggest that by wearing my wedding ring in public, I am involving someone in my sex life, because that's ridiculous. But yet somehow this idea comes up that because I wear my collar out, that I am therefore involving someone in my sex life, and I'm sort of baffled by it, to be honest with you. And I don't understand it. I really don't.
Which is why you're having trouble finding your words right now, is because that's a concept. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but you've spoken before. We know each other fairly well. I was there at the beginning of your exploration of the lifestyle, and have been there throughout. And knowing you as I do, that's a concept that's so foreign to you. As far as your collar being a sexual object, or your collar involving anyone else, that has nothing to do with anyone else. Your collar is between you and your dominant. Just because you choose to wear it in public doesn't mean you're involving the public in your relationship. You're not, any more than I'm involving the public, any more than I'm involving the public when I choose to go out in public in my wheelchair. It's
a part of who I am at this point.
Exactly.
It doesn't, and it baffles me. And I think that's why I have such a hard time with the casual BDSM thing, because to me, being submissive means so much more than what I do in the bedroom that I don't know how you can do it on a casual basis. And that is the thing I think I wanted to kind of talk about the most, is that it can't be casual for people like me, because it's about so much more than sex, and so many of those things are not casual. It is the little things, and I'll let you talk about some of the little things at your house too, just because I think it's a really important thing for people to hear. But at my house, those little things are, example, he drinks these Carnation instant breakfast protein drinks, and he drinks them in the morning when he goes to work. It's the thing that he does. And we buy them in 6-packs at the store. And just last week, I came home and I said to him, from grocery shopping, and I said to him, I got you some more of those Carnations. And he says, oh my goodness, thank you. You know, I was running low and I forgot to mention it to you, and I remembered it about the time you walked in the door. And I was like, yeah, I know. I remembered, though, when I was at the store that you needed more of them. That is one of the things that I'm talking about. That is inherently a part of my submission. It is knowing him and knowing his needs as well or better than he knows them himself.
I have a very similar experience, in that when my wife goes out grocery shopping, she will invariably come home with at least one, usually two, boxes of K-cups for my coffee makers. It doesn't matter to her whether I have a box sitting here on my desk or not. If we have the money to spend, she will come home with at least a box, because to her it is important, because she knows I enjoy them, because she knows that I drink at least a cup, usually 2 or 3 a day. It is important to her that she makes sure that I don't run out. It is important to her that I have the coffee to enjoy when I want it and when I need it. So she makes sure that it's here.
One of the other things that came up recently is that he's had a couple of different nights where he falls asleep very quickly when he's ready to go to sleep. There's really no sort of in between. He's either awake or asleep. It's a very rapid sort of process. And consequently, a couple of times recently, he has fallen asleep and woken up in the morning and realized his phone was not charged because he never plugged it in because he fell asleep. And now I know this, that he has done this a couple of times recently, and it has been an issue for him. So one of the things that I do now as part of my submission is that I take and I will go in there before I go to sleep. I'm usually up later than he is. I will go in when I go to sleep and just check, make sure, is the phone plugged in? Because it's a little thing that I can do to show him you are important to me. Those sorts of things don't exist in a casual sort of non-romantic arrangement. That only exists in these arrangements because we are romantically involved. He is my romantic partner. And, so I do these things because, as you say, it's important to me that he has the things that he needs. And one of those things is making sure that his phone is charged when he gets up in the morning, or that he has his carnation drink for in the morning when he goes to work, because he oftentimes will skip breakfast or eat junk because it's what he can get at the cafeteria at work. So if I make sure he has those drinks, he at least gets something with some nutrients and protein and things in him in the morning. And those things matter. But they matter because we're connected, because he is my romantic partner and not just my dominant. And
if you were some stranger in the street, it wouldn't matter to you in the slightest.
No, it only matters. Yeah, it matters to me because he matters to me. And that's the important thing I should take from this, is that, it matters because he matters. And because I am more than just his play partner, I do these things for him to make sure that he has what he needs to be happy and healthy and moving on. And it's one of the other reasons that we don't have a huge amount of jealousy in the relationship. I'm not going to say there's none because I'm a human being, but
I would call you on it if you did, and you know it.
Right. I'm a human being, but we don't have a huge problem with it, really. And part of that is because I know exactly where I stand in his life. I know what my role is in his life. I know that my place is mine. And because we are committed, I don't have to worry about, is he going to get something from someone else that he doesn't get from me? No, because the fact of the matter is, I'm his committed partner. And even if he does get something from someone else that he couldn't get from me in one form or another, it's never going to be a matter of what I give him not mattering as much, because he can't get the same things from them as he gets from me. And I think that is where I see some of these submissives especially, and I don't know for dominants, but I know for submissives, that is a huge concern of what I give him, because we're not romantically connected, because what I give him is in the bedroom, he can get that anywhere. Whereas I have the ability to say, you could give him things in the bedroom, but there are things I give him that you cannot. And that leads to a much bigger sense of security in the relationship. I think because exactly that, there are things that what can some other woman offer him? Well, she can offer him some fun in the bedroom, and that's fine. And we'll have a conversation, and that is absolutely a thing that can happen. But it's not going to ever be the same thing that he gets from me. Now, that was the question that I was kind of leading into, was I know for a submissive, it's important for us to know that what we give our dominants is something unique, that they can't get somewhere else. And that is why I see much more insecurity coming from those in more casual arrangements than those of us in committed arrangements, because we know what we give them that is unique to us. I don't know, is that something that comes up for you guys, or is that more a submissive thing?
No, it's not just a submissive thing. I know that when my wife needs something from me, when she needs something dominant, when she needs that support, she's not going to go to some random person. She's not going to seek out one of our friends online to give her the support she needs. She's going to come to me first. And as a matter of fact, I can speak to that with immediacy in that while we were recording this episode, she came out needing me for something. And the first thing I did was mute the call. I could still hear you, but I muted my mic so that we didn't interrupt the episode. And I sat here and held her for a good several minutes while we were talking, because that's what she needed from me. I put down what I was doing, and I took care of what she needed, because that's important to me.
The reason that the episodes are often recorded fairly late at night is because at my house, it is incredibly important that I be present and there to provide him with what he needs from me before I wander off to go do this. Because while I love the show and the show is very important to me, it's never going to outweigh my commitment to him. And because of that, oftentimes I will wait until he is settled and comfortable and ready to, curl up and watch YouTube and fall asleep before I wander out into the other room to record my episodes, because that commitment.
I would be willing to wager that what you do is you wait until he's dozing in front of YouTube before you bother coming out.
Generally, yes.
Because if he's still awake, I'd imagine you're curled up next to him. I know you well enough.
Yes, and he's very, and I don't think I know him well enough, and he won't care if I mention this, is that we are huge fans at my house of the 5 love languages. I don't know how familiar you are with the 5 love languages, but it is a fantastic relationship tool. And one of the things that has told us and taught us is that he is very touch-oriented. For him to feel loved and secure and safe and happy, he needs to be touched. And I assume guys try to claim that that's about sex, and again, I would reiterate that it's not really about sex. It is more about the fact that he needs me to touch him, to rub his neck, to rub his back, to hold his hand, to touch him. He needs to be touched. And so oftentimes I won't come out until he's dozing off, because until then I'm laying next to him and kind of rubbing on his back with my nails or what have you, because that makes him happy and comfortable and content. He needs to be touched. I am not touch-oriented particularly. It means a whole lot less to me than it does to him, and he knows that. But it is a thing that I do make an effort to include because it matters to him. And that, again, is one of those things that comes with that committed relationship. We know each other. I know his love language. I know how to make him feel content and loved and happy. And he knows how to do it for me. Mine is words. They call it words of affirmation in the 5 love languages, which is huge for me. I need those words. I need to hear you tell me thank you, that I did good, that you're proud of me, that you love me, those sorts of things. I need to hear those words. And
which is why it was so important for you when he stopped to thank you for bringing home his breakfast drinks. That spoke to you. That triggered for you.
Yeah, it matters to me, and that's a huge thing. And it's little, I think, to some people, but for me, that's massive. He stopped and he acknowledged, thank you for doing this, or like I said the other night, we were having dinner, and we had salad, and we had this, chicken pot pie thing. And I went to give him, I told him I was going to make him a plate, because I was making plates. And I went to make him a plate, and I brought him 2 plates. And he looked at the 2 plates, and he went, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, because what I had done was I had put the pot pie on one plate and the salad on the other. Because I know my husband. and he's going to prefer that the salads be kept separate from the pot pie so that they're not all jumbled up together.
I can't imagine it being served any other way, to be honest.
He doesn't like it, and I know he doesn't like it, and so it was a little thing. He didn't ask me to do it, but I thought to myself, you know what? He would probably prefer if I put the salad on the other plate so that he can put his dressing on his salad and all of that and not get it all up in his pot pie, because that's not yummy. And it meant a great deal to him because it's those little bits of service. But you can't have that unless you know them really, really well. And I don't think you can have that in a more casual arrangement. He's not my buddy. He's not my friend with benefits. He's my partner. And that means I know him, and I do things based on that. He would prefer. He enjoys this or that, and little things that matter. And I don't want to give the impression that it's a one-sided thing either, because it isn't. He does little things for me too, and even my children think it's hilarious because they have these cookies at his job, and they are iced sugar cookies, and they make them in different shapes and different colors, and they ice them with various things. And every so often, without a word, he will come home from work and he will hand me a cookie because he knows I like the cookies as himself. So he brings me a cookie because he knows I like them. And it is a little thing, but it is a big deal to me. But that's not something your friend does for you. That's not something your dom, who isn't your partner, does for you. That's something he does for me because we are more than just dom and sub. And it's all those little things that we kind of do for each other. And I think I do, if it's working for you, great, go with it and go be you. Go do all the kinky things you want to do in your life. But I do want people to be more aware that there are potentially upsetting risks to not being in a relationship and trying to sort of make this work in a more casual way. You can't ever really serve each other and take care of each other in a way that we can, because if you're not actually connected in that way. And I think that's the big thing I kind of wanted to talk about. I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up here, unless you have anything else you want to throw in there for us.
Not that I can think of, no.
Our next episode, Munchkin may be joining us again, depending on her work schedule, and I may invite you back on this one too, just because I think this is something you might be really interested to kind of bounce ideas and talk with us about a little bit. We talked about it in the previous episode. Munchkin and I want to do a touch on the concept of what we refer to as the tie-out versus fence versus property line styles of dominance and submission. And it's a weird analogy, I'm aware, but it's a thing that we want to kind of touch on, in that they are very different things, and one cannot, a property line dominant doesn't work with a tie-out submissive and vice versa.
No.
And so Munchkin will tell you she is much more of a tie-out, or at the very least a fence kind of girl. And myself and my dominant here are much more property line kind of people. And so I think it's something interesting, and I think that's something a lot of people don't necessarily think about, so I want to kind of touch on it a little bit and get that kind of out there. I think it's a great analogy, and I think people may find something useful to them in it. So I will let you know when we go to record that one, and you may get to hear from all three of us next time, depending on the scheduling. So
it would be my pleasure.
And we will catch you on the flip side. The episode will go up tonight on Anchor and Spotify, and either tonight or in the morning it'll go up on YouTube as well. So check us out, and we will see you next time.